Please introduce yourself and your background.
I'm Lane Bell, live in Chillicothe, Texas. Grew up on this farm here when hoeing cotton and decided that I didn't like to hoe cotton, so I went to cowboying for a living. Worked some ranches and mostly feed yard, give me background for the yearling business that I put together in later years. And we still run a few yearlings here for other people and some that I buy for myself.
How were you introduced to Nature's Formula?
I was introduced to Nature's Formula through Ed Urban. He'd called me one day, he said, I got a new deal. He said, we're going to start selling fertilizer. I said, okay. So anyway, it just kind of evolved from there. We got into all the products, and I use everything that I need that comes from Nature's Formula.
How long have you been using Nature's Formula products?
3 years. Started 3 years with the fertilizer, and then we just kind of worked into the drenches and the horse feed and the garlic mineral in the last year. And you know, we've used the flame mineral in front of that and had fantastic results out of everything I've ever used. Sure, it makes my business work a lot better.
What's been your experience with fertilizer? How do you use it?
Well, we dress the seed in the box, put it out, and I've got old antiquated drills, so we just use a hand sprayer to spray the seed and put it out, and then I come back and top dress once it comes out of the ground. And we've been getting along very well, and then we top dress in the spring.
What crops are you using it on?
Use wheat, coastal, hay grazer is the main things that I use here.
And what are you growing those crops for?
Grazing. We did make some hay. We do bale the coastal some, and we did bale some of the hay grazer. But a lot of times we have run cattle on that stuff since it was just real small. We kind of utilize our wheat crop. Our wheat, when it's 45 days out of the ground, we turn cattle in on it, and it grows. And it eventually, by springtime, it'll outgrow everything I put on it, and I don't graze it light. I usually we'll have 3/4 of a calf per acre on everything that we graze around here for when we buy stuff in these little traps back in here. So we use them pretty hard. And then if it gets time later in the spring, we'll go ahead and bale it. 8 acres may not make 4 bales, but it's grazed a lot of cattle all the way through the winter. You put on 2.5 pounds a day on it. So that's how we use it. We squeeze everything we get out of it.
Using it for 3 years, have you seen soil improvement?
Absolutely. This farm wasn't farmed for about 4 or 5 years prior to the time that I moved back home here. And so the ground was harder, and everything wasn't just quite right. But we've got it back, and every year my crops are better.
And the cattle do well on the fertilized?
The cattle do
crops?
Very well. Absolutely.
Have you ever done any tests side by side to see if the cattle prefer the fertilized versus non-fertilized or anything like that?
No, I'm not going to take that chance. I don't want to lose the money.
Okay. What's your experience? What have you used on the cattle products, and what's your experiences
Cattle
with
products
those?
use the lung score and their drench, or probiotic drench, and the MB1, and we use the feed active in our syrup tanks.
And how have they helped? How have those products helped you?
Well, just on some 3 weight calves in August here of last year, we had some dried out coastal up there, and our calves get a pound and a half a day on a 3 weight calf. Just using with the syrup, our mineral, and the combination of everything. It had been fertilized for sure, but it was August and there was no rain. So we did very well on that. And the health on these calves with the Sure Grow, with the lung score and the probiotic drinks and MB1 combination. I would have never bought calves out of the sale barn weighing 250, 300 pounds and left for a week to go to Nebraska and leave nobody here really that knew what they were doing looking after them. And we come home and everything was as good as it was when I left. So I'm sold on the stuff.
What's your experience with the horse products?
Horse products, fantastic. I use the horse feed all the time. My horses stay quieter and they stay in good shape. And I don't have a tie-up problem. I just don't have troubles with them. And they stay underneath me all day long. And I feed 2 gallons a day. 1 scoop at night. Horses grazing on pasture, and I feed them once a day and ride them nearly every day.
What's been your experience with Plus B additive?
Plus B, year before last, we planted wheat with army worms in the fence rows, and with the top dress on the seed box, and then top dress that we had no army worm damage. And I use it in the summertime on my hay grazer and on the coastal for grasshoppers and grove worms and anything else that's underneath there. But I love it.
What's been your favorite customer testimonial story?
My favorite customer testimonial story is a man at Santo. He called me one day and said it will keep wild hogs out of your pasture. And I told him, I said, well, it's not on the label. He said, I don't care. He said, I have no wild hog damage. He said, I live in the middle of a wild hog country, and all around us, they're having troubles with wild hogs. He said, I can cut my hay. He said, the first time in years that I've ever been able to even cut that hay patch because of the wild hog roots. So he swears by it. I've got to go with him in.
And what product is he using?
He's using the Sure-Gro with the Plus B.
How has Nature's Formula products help your business work better?
Well, it has allowed me to fertilize at not a great cost, and it's allowed me to grow crops when my neighbors are sitting around wishing they could plant because of armyworms. And it has allowed me to run about 300 head of cattle through 320 acres through the summer. And last summer we had 40 acres of hay grazer down here. We run 200 head of big yearlings on it all summer. So 40 acres of actual hay grazer and then 40 acres of just kind of what was left over the wheat crop and weeds. And we did very well on it. So, and then the calves went up, and the hay grazer come back up, and I run my cows on it all winter. So it saved me a lot of, I don't buy a lot of hay because I have hay grazer croppies will come back, and I've got something for them to eat. Economically, it's the best thing that ever come about. And as far as the job that it does, I'm kind of like what another guy said is, if Bill Strange said this stuff will make it rain, and it'll rain $10 bills, I believe it, because that's where it is for me. Never used anything like it in my life.
So when you get new cattle in from the sale barn, run us through how you handle them.
Now I handle them, they come off that trailer and right through this chute. And we use the lung score and the drench, probiotic drench, and give MB1 and penicillin. And then we give our IBR shots in one. And most of the time, that's pretty much all I have to do. Once in a while, I'll have to re-doctor some. But if we do, we'll re-doctor and use a little bit of Baytril, and sometimes that we don't have to doctor about one time after that. And that's not every calf. I don't have that whole big break deal on any of my calves. It'll just be 1 or 2. And sometimes some of those calves I bought probably weren't the really #1 quality, but they're cheap, and so I'll buy them and take a chance on them.
Before using Nature's Formula products, did you buy those cheap calves or not?
No, before I used Nature Farm product, I didn't buy any calves. I wouldn't. I know what medicine cost, and it cost too much money. I couldn't operate that way. I run cattle for some other people, I have run as many as 10,500 head of yearlings turned out on the country. And doctor 50, 60 head a day horseback. Sometimes that was one pasture, then you switch pastures and use Vicryl by the 5-gallon buckets. I mean, through the day. If you can make it get it in 5-gallon buckets, it would have been handy. But we don't do that. A bottle of Vicryl around here will last a long time on 75 or 100 head of yearlings. So that's a 250cc bottle. We use a little MB1 and use a little penicillin, and we get by very, very well.
What's been your biggest success while using the Nature's Formula cattle products?
Well, the biggest success story that I've got was there was a feedlot out of Nebraska had some cattle down here close to Seymour, and they sent us about 500 head of those calves, and they all come out of the sick pen. And we really didn't know what they had for sure, and whatever. The only thing they said that they hadn't had was Draxxin, so we started using Draxxin. And then I talked them into using our drenches, the lung scores, in our
Feel right.
product drench. So we run those calves all through the chute. After we had 90 head come in, and about 6 days later we had 45 of them left. And it was that day we dragged 6 or 8, 10 head of calves a day off of that deal. So we run them all through, and as I told the man that over that deal, I said, he called me, he said, well, how'd that work? And I said, well, for 24 hours, we hadn't had any deads. So then we would lose a few. There's a few calves that are just too far gone. It don't make any difference what you do. You're going to lose a calf or two that's gone. But we saved the rest of those calves and shipped some really nice calves in the end of it. So we stopped the wreck. We didn't have all that big doctor and the big death loss. To the next spring, the calves looked very well. And actually, we've done another deal with a friend of mine at Turner that had some calves in a feedlot, wean calves. And we did his deal. He was losing a lot of little calves, and we drenched his calves, and he started using, at weaning, we drench his calves every year now. And he's not having the problems, because it takes the stress off of them, they don't give them that immunity.
So what's been your overall experience with all of Nature's Formula products?
Everything, it's been good. It's been really good to me.